Welcome to the Pivot Point podcast. This season, I am focused on real-time hot topics in the gender equality and diversity spaces. In these episodes, I will break down current events, provide my point of view, what I liked, and would maybe like to see change, and leave you with some actionable tips to think about and discuss with your organization. I'm sharing this information because equality is a candid conversation. It takes bravery, it takes courage, and you don't have to do it alone. At Pivot Point, I believe that we are stronger together, that we are one. So let's dig into this week's topic, and we have invited a special guest to kick us off. My friend, my colleague, my peer group contributor, Jen Edds. She is my podcast strategist and thinking partner, and she helped me reorient this season. And I thought it would be appropriate to have her as our first and maybe only guest this season. Welcome, Jen.
Thanks for having me. After I told you not to have guests on this season, and here I am on your show as a guest. I'm not sure what that says about our working relationship, but it's working for us, isn't it?
Yeah, I really take your advice to heart.
Yes, I can tell. Yeah.
So you're here because I really wanted to share the evolution of the Pivot Point podcast and the journey we've been on over the last few years, 40 episodes in, reorienting and thinking about what's next. And before we get into that, I'd really like to share how Jen and I first met. And so it's been truly a journey in our friendship and in our partnership and how we collaborate together. Jen and I were at a Startup Ladies luncheon.
Yeah, shout out to the Startup Ladies.
Go Kristen Cooper. Yes, and it was several years ago, almost 4.
It's been a day or two.
Thank you. Yeah. And it was so funny. So it was a book exchange, and we sat at the same table and we were exchanging books, and I got Jen's book, The War of Art.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. Which I have taken these words of wisdom also. And at the time, you were talking about your business a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
But I had not thought about podcasting as a way to spread my message and to share some of the tools and insights that I had. But you really got me to think about it.
That's good. I'm so glad I went to that lunch. I'm so glad that I sat at your table, and you were so nice, because I was like, I'm still somewhat introverted and socially awkward at times at networking type things. And, then there sits Julie, like the nicest person that's so inviting. And we totally hit it off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did. It was fun because you articulated your message in just such a succinct way about getting inside the ears and hearts of your audience. And I thought, I do conferences, I go to organizations, and I always wonder about, like, when I leave, what happens. And this seemed like a really tangible tool for people to continue to engage in this conversation. So it wasn't just that one and done experience.
Exactly. It gives people an opportunity to get more of you.
Yes. And so fast forward a few years, and in our working relationship, you helped me edit all the episodes, build the strategy for all the episodes, which has just been so helpful to get outside of my head and get that input. So as we were resetting for season 3 and thinking about what's the next wave, how do we want to articulate these stories going forward, I'd done pretty much all interviews for the first 40.
Yeah. And, not to be bossy, but I'm like, Julie, I really just want to hear you. Like, what are your thoughts on what's happening out in the world? Because I know that you get those questions, like you probably get emails and direct messages. Like, as soon as something blows up in the news, they're like, hey, Julie, what do you think about that? Mm-hmm. And I was like, maybe you should share those thoughts with everyone, not just your DMs and email lists.
Right. Yeah, it's so true. People will reach out to me sometimes, admittedly, before I even hear about it on the news, which is slightly embarrassing. So I have really taken, re-invited the news into my life in a way that's digestible, and then I can follow, what are the critical things that are happening in the world from an overall diversity space, from a gender equality space. There's things happening every week. And what I find with my audience is largely corporate people
Mm-hmm.
that don't know how to talk about these things.
Right. Even though those conversations are probably happening within their organizations.
Mm-hmm. They're happening everywhere.
Yeah.
And so people are talking about it with people they feel safe around,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're talking about politics. They're like talking about the latest thing Trump did.
Mm-hmm.
And I think especially as managers, we're so fearful of saying or doing the wrong thing and offending someone.
Mm-hmm.
So we just don't talk about it at all,
Exactly.
which is a big mistake.
Right.
Because then people aren't being their full selves at work if you're not being your full self.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying to launch into political debates in your
Right.
next meeting. However, I think we should really be talking about the events and having a point of view on it that invites other point of views. So that's our intention. I mean, you really pushed me to help think that through. Have a point of view
Mm-hmm.
and share what I like, but also what can we maybe change about this? How could we invite positive change through
Yes.
this experience? And so that's exactly what we're going to do. And we're going to make this super digestible, 10 minutes tops. And you can walk away with something actionable, a conversation you might start, a question you might ask, a thought you might share, or if nothing else, you get updated on the news because maybe you're like me and stopped listening to the news. So I hope to be on the forefront, reporting on things, within 24, 48 hours of a critical event happening and arming you with some facts, some point of view, and some action items to take. Did you know that you can find all 3 seasons of our 40-plus episodes at nextpivotpoint.com? And you can sign up for our next free online workshop, get access to our 5 questions to get the gender equality conversation started in your organization, and ask me your questions directly. I appreciate you listening to this episode. Who do you know that also needs to hear this message? Hit the share button. Connect with me on Instagram at nextpivotpoint. Remember, at Pivot Point, we believe we are stronger together. We are one.